Alright, you guys, so to begin with in this unit on World War I, before we get into U.S. involvement, we're going to look briefly at the causes of World War I, just as a recap and to get us into understanding why we stayed essentially out of this war for so long. So, things you should have right next to you is the note taker that says Causes of World War I. And please note the essential question up at the top left. And it says, what should be the role of the United States in the world? And as some follow-ups, was it right when it chose to stay out of World War I? So those are questions you're going to be considering as you take notes, and you will answer them in the summary section on the back. So to begin, we are going to be looking at the 5 main causes of World War I, and this should sound very similar to things you learned last year in world history. So I like to use the acronym MANIA, M-A-N-I-A, to look at the 5 causes, as for me wars are chaotic and essentially full of mania, and so hence the 5 main causes. So the first one is militarism, and you'll write down the definition, which is a policy of building up a strong military to prepare for war. And we're going to look specifically at these in just a little bit. The next cause is the alliances that were starting to form during this time period, and the agreements between nations to provide aid and protect one another in case of war or conflicts. Next, we'll look at nationalism, which is the extreme pride in one's country, and we're going to see a variety of European nations start to take on strong nationalistic ideas. Next is imperialism, which is when one country takes over another country economically and politically. And last semester we left off on U.S. imperialism as they were trying to take over other small islands in the Pacific and near Asia. And lastly, the assassination that prompted many of these 4 previous causes all to happen at once was the assassination of the Archduke of Austria Hungary. Francis, or Franz Ferdinand, is assassinated, and we're going to look closely as to how that came about. So next, you should have your definitions written down, and now we're going to look closely at each of the causes and then move on from there. So when we're looking at militarism, we're going to focus on Germany and Britain and France. And so Germany and Britain as an example of militarism, the idea is that to conquer you need an army. So especially when they're going overseas and trying to take over other territories, to do that you need your army as a show of strength, as well as a navy, especially if you want to conquer overseas. Britain at this time was the number 1 in terms of a navy, and Germany wanted to rival Britain and create a strong navy, one that was stronger than Britain. So essentially we have a race to who can have the strongest navy. France is also showing a demonstration of their militaristic power, as they were recently in 1871 defeated, and they start to build forts along the border with Germany in order to protect it from future German invasion. Alright, next we have alliances and nationalism. So take down a few notes on the alliances that formed, as well as what nationalism looked like in terms of Germany and this area known as the Balkans. So with alliances, we have the Triple Alliance, where we see Germany, Austria Hungary, and Italy on one side, and then we have the Triple Entente, which is France, Russia, and Great Britain. As a result of these alliances, we start to see Europe become visually divided. By 1907, we have them armed into 2 different camps, each growing militaristically and their alliances growing stronger and stronger in the case of conflict or future war. So with nationalism, we're going to see Germany on one end. After the Franco-Prussian War in 1871, Germany becomes united, And this is where we start to see them start to nation build and become united as a German people. And they forged their own national identity. So what we consider German, their heritage, their customs, beliefs, their culture, this became very strong during this time period. Another group that's trying to maintain their ethnic identity is scattered throughout a region known as the Balkan Peninsula. And at this time, the Austrian Empire was struggling to keep this area as a nation, as these ethnic groups wanted to recreate their own identity and have their own nation and not have this empire controlling them. So they essentially wanted their own independence. And this is what's going to start building and creating tensions amongst this area when Austria Hungary, the Archduke, comes to visit Serbia. And we're going to get to that in just a bit. So imperialism is our next cause, and looking at it more specifically, we see countries like Britain and France, Austria and Germany starting to use this as a way to expand their empire and gather resources from other areas that aren't within their own territory. So Britain and France are an example. After the Industrial Revolution, Britain and France become extremely wealthy through their conquest overseas. So in areas such as Africa and Asia, Britain and France start to dominate and enhance their power through that. Austria is another example where we see them take over Bosnia, which is part of that region known as the Balkan Peninsula, in 1908. The Serbians did not like Austria coming to take over, and this is where we start to see conflicts, especially when the Archduke comes for a visit in this area. Germany is another one growing its imperialistic power and taking over and competing with Britain, and they wanted to build an empire that not would only challenge Britain militaristically, but also imperialistically as well. So here's some images from the event that sparks and incites essentially what becomes known as World War I. We have the Archduke and his wife visiting Bosnia, and on June 28th, he is assassinated in Bosnia. Essentially, he is on a visit, and the Serbian nationalist Gavrilo Princip is the one who assassinates the Archduke, which sets off the chain reaction that starts World War I. On July 23rd is when the assassination, when they issue an ultimatum to Serbia, and it says, turn over the conspirators, the people who plotted to kill the Archduke, or we go to war. Eventually, Serbia does not fully comply, so eventually war is declared. And this is where all the alliances come into full effect. Everybody's ready militaristically, the alliances are formed. People want to defend their nation and defend their resources. So this is where full war breaks out in what is known as the Great War or World War I. And eventually you might at this point be asking, well, what does this have to do with the United States? Nowhere was the United States mentioned in this whole causes breakdown. And so this process and conflicts leading up to World War I, we really don't see what it has to do with the U.S. And so this leads into us looking at the word neutrality. By 1916, up to that election, the United States was starting to pull out its interests in European conflicts. We didn't really want to be involved. We wanted to stay out of it. And President Wilson actually won the election, the presidential election, using the slogan, "He kept us out of war." The U.S., because of this, remained neutral from 1914 at the start of the war up until 1917. And from this point on, we're going to look at, United States neutrality and the process that it took for us to actually declare war and actually get involved in this war. So that's what we're going to be looking at in the next few days: neutrality, the Zimmerman telegram, and other threats to U.S. Security that essentially forced us into getting involved in World War I. So answer your essential question in the summary. Make sure you took down notes. Write down some questions you may have, and we will review this when the notes are due.